Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. We don't have a storm tonight or anything like that, but I am going to just try to keep us all on track and keep things tight so we can get home and enjoy our tacos or whatever it is that we do for Valentine's Day. So it is 8:32 in the evening. Welcome to our Share Advisory Committee meeting on Monday, February 14th. I'm calling us to order. And our next item of business, 1.02, is roll call. Kelly, please.
Okay, Sarah Linda Kaiser.
Present.
Lydia DeFlorio.
Here.
Stephanie Schumann.
Present.
Vanessa Van Koor. I will let you know if she arrives, Ashley. Kelly Roper, present. Manny Magana is not here physically yet. Is he online? Okay.
He is not at this time, no.
Andrea Thompson is absent tonight. Ashley Wade.
Present.
And Rabbi Benjamin Zober.
Present.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Kelly. So I have Manny and Andrea are not in tonight. And what was the third person?
Andrea is not here tonight, but Vanessa just arrived.
And Manny.
And
Vanessa.
our legal
Okay.
counsel is also remote, just for those
She
people
is.
watching.
Thank you for saying.
Yeah.
Thank you for stating that. Okay. So with 6 out of 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, actually 8 out of. Yeah, we meet quorum. So we're going to move on to items 2.01 of possible approval of the minutes from our December 13th meeting. And I can see the people who are virtual who are in person if you raise your hand. If you're virtual, if you just look directly in your camera, I know, but you can also raise your hand there too.
For the record, Manny
Welcome, Vanessa.
also arrived.
Oh,
So
welcome, Manny. Awesome. All right, hi. Okay, so we're looking at, since we just had a couple people come in, we'll just say again, we're looking at excuse me, we've done roll call, and we're looking at item 2.01, the minutes from our December meeting, December 21. I'm looking for someone, any possible discussion? Okay, and so if not, we'd be looking for a motion to approve those minutes. Oh, sorry. I'm going to pause before we have a motion. Is there any, do we have Luis tonight? Is there any public comment on this item?
Hi, good evening, Ashley. Luis here. No public comment for this item.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd be ready to entertain a motion.
Kelly
Kelly.
Roper would like to move that we accept the meeting minutes for December.
Manny Magana, and I second that motion.
Thanks, Kelly and Manny. Any other discussion or possible thoughts? Okay, so if you're in favor to approve those minutes, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. And so the minutes pass unanimously. Wonderful. So looking at item 2.02, presentation and discussion of strictly the revisions of the 4th grade curriculum draft lesson friendship with possible action on that item. Kelly?
Okay. I'm going to go straight to the edits. If you all remember, there were a few. The main one was being the quiz that I accidentally omitted last time that I presented to you, but there were a couple other edits. So I apologize for my, zooming through here. To bring you to the first edit, which was consent. And Manny, I remember you asking what was under the slide 6 that was missing. Consent, which went along with our discussion as well, permission for something to happen. So that was the first edit. Moving on to, this was the next piece that was teacher talking points, I do believe, that you wanted as a slide. So your body belongs to you. You get to decide about your own body. No one should touch you without permission. Consent means always choosing to respect others' boundaries. Consent can be taken back at any time. So along with the going over teacher notes and teacher talking points, it will be up in front of students to see. And then the last part was the healthy and unhealthy friendship quiz. So these were the questions. There's a total of 7. True or false? In a healthy relationship, friends and or romantic partners put pressure on each other to do something they may not want to do. Again, these are true or false questions. Interested in how the other person is feeling, share personal information, and trust each other. Number 3, do what the other person wants so they won't get mad at them. Number 4, don't get insulted or take it seriously when the other person teases them, like calling them names like stupid or lazy or swearing at them. Number 5, always think the same way and never argue. Number 6, do what the other person wants to do, even if they don't want to or don't think it's a good idea. And number 7, support and encourage one another and stand up for each other when they are being teased or bullied. So that's the true and false question that I forgot last time. And then there's the answer key with explanations to go along. So number 1, question being true, people in healthy relationships don't insist that other people do what they want to do. Putting pressure on someone to do something is not a sign of respect or friendship. Number 2 is true. People in healthy relationships often share personal concerns, stories, and experiences with each other that they wouldn't share with other people who may not be close friends or who they just don't know very well. They should be able to have the expectation that the other person will keep that personal information private and not tell anyone unless they feel that keeping the secret can be harmful or dangerous to their friend, in which case they may tell a responsible adult. Number 3 is false. Healthy relationships are equal relationships, meaning both people get to have a say in what they do together. If one person gets angry because the other won't do what they want, that is not respectful and is not an equal relationship. It's okay to be annoyed with someone who doesn't want to do what you want to do, but that doesn't mean that the other person has to give in if they feel strongly about it. Number 4 is false. People in healthy relationships should never call other people names or tease one another with words that can be hurtful. Healthy joking around doesn't include insults, put-downs, or threats. Number 5 is false. Disagreements are fine and perfectly healthy. It would be more unhealthy if there were never any disagreements, because that might suggest that one person is getting their way all the time and the other person is giving in all the time. People in healthy relationships discuss their viewpoints and feelings together to reach a solution. Number 6 is false. Just like it is not okay to pressure someone into doing something they don't want to do, it's not healthy to do what another person wants if you don't want to. It is okay to compromise sometimes, but if something just sounds like a really bad or dangerous or wrong or just not at all interesting idea, you shouldn't do it. And lastly, number 7 is true. It can be really difficult for someone, even a good friend, to stick up for someone who is being teased or bullied because they are afraid that they may then be bullied too. When friends stick up for each other, however, they are less likely to be bullied. If it's impossible to stick up for them because it doesn't feel safe, it's important to find an adult to tell who can intervene. Helping a friend when they are in trouble is very important to a healthy relationship. And those are your edits from the 4th grade friendship lesson.
Thank you, Rochelle. That's really looking great. So did we have any comments or discussion on the quiz or the edit with the consent slide?
Vanessa Vancore for the record. I just wanted to look at number 1 on the quiz at the wording. Is that one true?
Put pressure on each other to do something they may not want to do. True people in, I must, good point, thank you.
When you were reading through the answer key,
And you were like,
I thought it was off
thank
a little
you.
bit. The second half of the answer answers it, but the way that it's phrased.
It's right.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, good catch.
Good catch. Thank you, Vanessa. Anything else? Kelly?
Kelly Roper, for the record, not as important of a catch, but on number 2, there's interested is misspelled.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Boy, good thing you all have such eyes for details. Okay. Luis, do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Thank you. If we have further discussion, I would certainly love to engage in that, but if not, I'm ready to entertain a motion.
I'll put forward a motion.
Thanks, Manny.
I, Manny Magana, move that we move the share lesson with the 2 edits of fixing number 1 and number 1 making it false, and number 2 fixing the word interested. God, move forward to put it forward for approval. Did I do that right? I can never remember.
Recommend it to the Board of Trustees.
Yes, I recommend it to the Board of Trustees. Thank you, Ashley.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Manny. And a second?
I, Sarah Linda Kaiser, move that I second that.
Thank you, Sarah Linda. And any discussion on this item or on the motion? Luis, have we received any public comments since 30 seconds ago?
No public comment.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we're looking at voting on the motion forwarded by Manny, seconded by Sarah Linda. All in favor, you raise your hand, say aye.
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 Thanks, Rabbi.
Aye.
Thanks. Thanks,
I pushed
Lydia.
the
And
wrong
any,
button.
and any opposed say no. We might just count pointing at the screen from now on as that's a yes. Okay, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Okay, awesome. So we're looking at item 2.03. Presentation and discussion by the Washoe County School District Special Education Department on adaptations and modifications made to the high school share curriculum to better meet the needs of the high school special education student population. I've really been looking forward to this presentation all year.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to comment and note that on the board docs, there's another document attached. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did.
Chapters 1 to 3 Girls' Day PDF.
They have 2 attachments for their presentation.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because it wasn't attached to their presentation.
Oh, okay.
It was attached
the board doc.
2.02.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So,
Okay.
Oh, was
Thank you.
Andrick?
Okay.
So I just want to check in with Andrea real quick to see if we can look at that and look at those materials in 2.03 if they were attached in the agenda to 2.02.
Oh, good.
Yes, if they were still attached to the agenda and it's clear and obvious that they were intended to go with 2.03 and they're available for everyone to access.
Okay, I would agree that we've met all of those criterion. Thank you for clarifying.
Awesome. I will invite our guests up. We have Jody and Linda and Trish coming up to speak and present.
Good evening. I'm Trisha Lozano, for the record. I am a special ed administrator. I oversee low incidence, which includes CLS strategies, social resource. These are programs for students with developmental delays. And we're here today to talk about a very important topic. The share curriculum for our students with disabilities has not been updated for over 15 years. So we have delved into this topic. I'll let you know that it desperately needs to be updated. And with that, we formed a CLS strategies committee that consisted of high school teachers from special programs. And we looked at the content for share. And with that, we looked at evidence-based practice that we use to teach our students with disabilities. When we looked at the share content, we saw a huge discrepancy between access of the curriculum that our special education students were receiving. So the committee worked over several months to include accommodations for students with developmental delays to be able to access this curriculum using these research-based strategies that I was talking about. So we're here today to give you a little bit of information of why we think this is important, and we want to share with you some of the accommodations that we're recommending for our students with disabilities. I also want to say that what came out of our discussion was we did feel like there was a need to have a supplemental curriculum for our students with disabilities, and so that did come out in the committee, but we would like to start with some access and accommodations for our students.
Okay. Trish and Jody and Linda, I have a quick question just on housekeeping because I don't know when you want to scroll, and it's up here. I don't know if you want to tell me when to scroll, or we could take a quick pause and get you guys set up so that you can scroll yourself.
We can tell you it's not a
Okay.
it's a short presentation.
You're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize profusely for, I was like, I don't know when they want to scroll.
Before we move on, though, if we could pull up the current CLS share curriculum. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So what I wanted you to keep in mind, for those of you who are familiar with the share high school curriculum now for our typical developing peers, I think if you look at this, you're going to see that there's a huge discrepancy of access of what our students are getting compared to what their typical peers are getting. And we're going to talk about why that is a problem in a minute. So I just want you to kind of scroll through and look at what they're kind of getting as an example now to what our typical developing high school students are getting.
Tell me when you would like me to slow down or stop or.
Well, this is a good example here. You know, it's just very basic. They're talking about puberty and changes and things like that, but it doesn't really get into depth of what our typical developing high school students are learning. And so it's very outdated. This curriculum is over 15 years old and has not been updated.
Trish, can I add something in there? That this isn't necessarily the high school curriculum that we updated. This is a different curriculum altogether. Okay.
Thank you, Rochelle. I also wanted to bring up that, you know, there was a girls' day and a boys' day, and so that will probably want to be looked at too to see if we want to update to be more in line with what typical peers are getting when they're getting this share education.
Am I able to ask a question regarding this? When do they see this?
Sure, Manny.
typically? Like, when do they typically see this lesson? I know we're talking in high school, but is it freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year?
Well, I'll tell you that for our special programs, we really recommend that the students are taught the curriculum throughout the year and over again. It's really important for our population to have the reteaching of it. It may not have applied to them yet, so they could go over the lesson like a whole year and then go over the lesson again the next year. or pull it out if they need it again. And that's what we really recommend for the teaching of our programs.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And you can see that the photos are pretty outdated as well. They're more like characters.
Like they're a printable, like that was scanned and put into the
Mm-hmm.
PowerPoint. In the current materials that you're using, are there videos?
Yes, there is a DVD that comes with the program and a little like booklet, which is all cartoon-like drawings within the booklet, and the images within the DVD are exactly the same, and so they mirror those similar images, which is a lot like what you're seeing in the workbook pages that are represented within the PowerPoint. And what's really interesting is that it doesn't change much from elementary to high school. Mm-hmm. It's pretty much the same. In the high school curriculum, they get a couple of extra chapters that talk a little bit more about puberty, whereas in the elementary version, it doesn't have these chapters on puberty.
Thank you. And just in case someone on the committee had wanted to view those DVDs, Rochelle, how would someone on the committee look at those materials?
Oh, ask me. And
access them.
Yes, I am more than happy to share.
Thank you.
How are we going to view them? Because as far as I'm aware of, at least, no computer in my school has a DVD player anymore. Is my other worry with this. Because as far as I'm aware of, DVDs are pretty much like the dinosaurs now.
Well, we have some DVD drives, so if you need to borrow them, you can borrow them from me.
Okay.
Thank you. I think we've kind of interrupted your flow. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, and as I said, this is an example of what we have now. And if you think about our current high school curriculum for typically developing peers, it's very different. And so we're here to talk about how we can get some access for our students.
Wonderful. I'm glad you're here.
So Rochelle, if you'll go back to the PowerPoint. And Tricia pretty much talked through that slide already. So why are we here? Obviously, when you look at that curriculum we just showed you, not only does it not align to the curriculum that we're presenting to our students and their general educational peers, but it wasn't great curriculum for our students with intellectual and developmental disabilities either. So if you'll go to the next slide, Rochelle. There has been a lot of research done around sexuality and health education for this particular population over the last 10 years. And one of the big things that's come out of that is that our students are not receiving access to sexuality education. It's significantly lower. So data, and the numbers will skew depending on what you're reading, but typically 89% of students come out of high school having received sexuality and health education, whereas only 16.18% of their counterparts with intellectual and developmental disabilities have received access to that education. So right away, they're just not giving access. And why is that happening? Well, there's a lot of reasons why. This list is not exhaustive, but part of it starts with the fact that many people perceive individuals with more significant disabilities as perpetual children, that they're just not going to grow up, so we don't have to teach them this information. There's also an inaccurate belief that they may just be asexual, so we don't have to treat them like sexual beings. So they've been left out of sexual education for decades. Sexuality of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities is often looked at as deviant, that it's deviant behavior that we just need to stop rather than teach. And I know I can see some of your faces, which I appreciate, but believe it or not, there's a wide percentage of people that have these old beliefs about our students with disabilities, and so they just don't include them in education. There is a lack of expressive communication skills with our students. We know that that is part of the characteristics of them having cognitive disabilities. So because they can't express their needs, therefore they're not included in the educational aspect of those needs. There's this fear that if we teach them about sexuality, that means they're going to then go out and use what we've taught them, which I'm sure you've heard before, but it actually shows us the opposite. We also find that it was normal to sterilize individuals with intellectual disabilities early on in the 20th century, and there was still a stigma around the fact that individuals with cognitive disabilities should be sterilized, that we shouldn't be allowing them choice over their own bodies. It wasn't until 1991 that law was actually repealed, so, which isn't that long ago, that they made it to where it was not legal to just go ahead and sterilize somebody based on their IQ. So we're coming along, but we have a lot to improve upon as we're moving forward. There's also been a lack of appropriate and valid sexuality education and health curriculum as well for our students. And so if there isn't something out there for them, then the teachers don't have anything to teach. Next slide. So we hit a lot of challenges, though, when we're teaching this population, and this is where I want to make sure you have a good understanding of what our students need. And we know that, I already mentioned, it's perceived as dangerous, so we need to find a way to overcome that by teaching individuals that it's the opposite of that, right? That it's dangerous for them not to have the knowledge and not to have the information. We know that our students need a substantial amount of visual supports, which is difficult when you're talking about this content, because in some of the examples you saw of like reproductive organs, that means nothing to our population. That is, it's so significantly abstract, it might as well be the inside of an ear. They need concrete examples. They need real visuals. They need full bodies. They need to see things in actual perspective of what they see in order for them to understand, generalize, and maintain that content. They need direct instruction, and so they need somebody, like Tricia was saying, to teach these things and to teach them repetitively in order for them to be able to grasp the content that we're trying to teach. We know that they have limitations in academic and communication skills, and so that's why they need a lot of accommodations and modifications made to traditional programs or content that's put out there. We also know that they have difficulty understanding social cues and discriminating, and so we have to have direct conversations about what does it mean, exactly what is consent, what isn't consent, and having very specific conversations. Nothing can be abstract, nothing can be overgeneralized. Some more challenges we face in educating our students is that there's a need for methods and materials that are designed for the population. Again, there's decades worth of research showing how our students learn and what they need to learn. The things like visual supports or real objects to understand. They need multisensory approaches. They need things repeated. They need frequent access. They need to be taught when something naturally occurs. And so all of those methods for instruction that we know are designed for our population need to be taken into account when we're talking about sexuality and health education. Our students have faced numerous battles and barriers with access to this kind of content. Not only is it typically provided in a general ed setting, such as a health education class in high school, well, our students aren't always getting access to those classes. And if they're not getting access to that class, are they getting access to the content? And if they can't access that whole class, how else could they access this content? So overcoming some of those barriers and figuring out how to not only accommodate what's available, but to even get them access to the class where it's being provided. We also know that there's a lack of formal evaluation for sexuality education curriculum for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so while there's a population of people looking at this and researching it, they are slow to come up with the curriculum and the assessments to show what needs to be taught and if students are making progress in what's being taught. There's also a lack of training for teachers. Teachers do not come out of a college prep program ready to teach sexuality education. They don't in general ed either. I know that our science teachers are a little more comfortable, but our special education teachers absolutely put up a wall when you start talking about teaching this content. They frequently have encouraged parents to say no thank you to the content because they don't want to teach it. But it's not that they don't want to teach it, it's that they don't know how to teach it. And they've never been provided the tools to teach the content to our students and to understand why it's so imperative that our students get this content. Okay, so then what does this lack of sexuality education mean for our students? If you don't know already, it leads to deficiencies related to health and safety. So not only safe sex and puberty, including menstruation, so we're also seeing a much greater risk of sexual abuse and assault. And Linda's going to talk to you more about that in a minute, but there is evidence to support that there's a lot of inappropriate sexual interactions within our population of students, not only with people without disabilities, but also within the community of disabilities, because if they aren't taught what's right and how to pursue such relationships, it leads to these inappropriate relationships. There's a high incidence of sexually transmitted disease and infections among the population. Again, they don't have the knowledge, they don't know what safe sex looks like, they don't know how to engage in safe sex, and so it leads to more sexually transmitted diseases. I think one of the most important things I want to say before Linda takes over is that this perception that teaching about sexuality education is going to be detrimental or lead to negative outcomes is the biggest thing we want to try to change for our students, because we know that the education is going to improve their outcomes and improve their knowledge. And so it's really about how can we deliver this not only to the students but to the teachers who have to deliver it so that we can see better outcomes. Okay. You want that? Yes, sorry. Oh yeah, sorry, thank you. My name is Jody Prudente. Do you need me to spell it? I was so excited, I forgot. It's JODEEPRUDENTE. And I'm currently the Dean of Students at Marvin Piccolo, but I was a CLS teacher for 17 years, so I did this. I tried.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you, Jody.
That was a cue for me to introduce myself. My name is Linda Tran. I am a special ed facilitator supporting schools in Area 3, and I also support Tricia in the Low Incidence Department. And I, too, as a former teacher who taught SHARE at the elementary school level. So when Tricia presented the CLS one for high school, I went, that looks almost exactly the same as what I taught in elementary. With the addition of that puberty. So You know, we're here to let you all know, and I know you all are in agreement that there is a need to have specialized curriculum for us to provide that access for our students. So what I'm going to go over is some of the statistics for our specialized population in this area. So as Jody mentioned, the lack of training for our teachers, but also the perception that we will keep them safe by not providing this content and exposing them to this curriculum, correct? That's actually detrimental to them. And so on this slide here, it's just really to protect our specialized populations, individuals with IDD, is to educate them and providing that instruction to them. So understanding the crime. So people with different disabilities may face different challenges. We see our students face challenges within the classroom setting. They're going to experience those same challenges out in the public setting, within their homes. And here is really targeting that they are at a higher risk for crimes like sexual assault and sexual abuse. And the reason for that is that they may not understand or have that lack of information about what healthy relationships look like, what healthy sexuality, and what types of touching are appropriate. And a big part of this is that some of our populations of students have that need to need that adult assistance, right, for toileting or grooming. So we need to teach them the appropriate touch that an adult can provide to assist them with their daily needs, but also there's a line that where it's not appropriate. And so they have a higher risk because they need that assistance within their daily lives. So perpetrators may use their power to threaten, coerce, or force individuals into sexual activities for individuals that rely on that caregiver or that individual assistance from them. Abusers may take away the access to tools of communication. So if you have an individual that requires an AAC device to communicate, if that voice output system is taken away from them, how are they able to articulate and communicate that they need assistance or they need help? People with disabilities may be less likely to be taken seriously. So their developmental age may not match their chronological age. And so they may be deemed as, do they truly understand what happened to them? And when they are recounting their experiences, is that a true retelling or a recount of what they've experienced? And then they may face challenges accessing services to report a crime. So say individuals that are hard of hearing, they might not have that means to communicate. And if they did have it, that tool may be taken away from them. Okay, next slide. So here's just some statistics from the National Crime Victimization Survey. As you can see, the survey was taken, it's a 10-year time frame from 2009 to 2019. And it shows and indicates the rate of violent victimization against persons with disabilities. The key thing is that individuals with disabilities are nearly 4 times, they encounter 4 times the rate of a person without a disability. So for every 1,000 person over the age of 12, 42.2 is a victim of a violent crime versus 12.4 to every 1,000 individuals that does not have a disability. Okay, next slide. So why is it important for us to educate our most vulnerable populations? So like I said earlier, people with disability are victims of 26% of non-fatal violent crime, while accounting for 12% of the population. So they only account for 12% of the population, and yet they are at a higher risk of being a victim. Persons with cognitive disabilities have the highest rate of violent crimes or victimization against them, so 83.3 people per 1,000. And then 19% of rapes or sexual assaults against persons with disabilities were reported to police compared to 36%. So that means of communication, that tie-in. If they were a victim, were they able to communicate that? And as we see, they're almost 4 times as much of a victim, and yet they are unable to report. next slide. This one right here just breaks it down a little bit more for our male and female populations, and then our race and ethnicity background. And we kind of discussed that, how do we provide this access to our students, and then providing access to students from different backgrounds and cultures, and access to language, right? So it's really important that we see that they're 4 times as likely to have a crime against them. For males, it says that is at a rate of 42.7 per 1,000 compared to 13.4 for individuals without a disability. For females, it's even at a higher rate at 49.4 per 1,000 to 11.3 per 1,000 for females without disabilities. And then for all racial and ethnic groups, person with disabilities had a higher violent victimization rates than person without disabilities. So that access to education is key. We want to be able to provide a curriculum for our teachers, for them to feel comfortable enough to teach it to our students, and then our students having that access to be able to have that repetitive teaching throughout the course of their schooling. And then this slide here goes over the breakdown of the age of the victims. So we're looking at our high school curriculum in particular. You'll see here, they're 3.5 times the rate of having a violent crime against them than they are when they do not have a disability. So that's 16 through 19. Is that really that age group that we're looking at? So if you're looking at the rate per 1,000, we're at 179 individuals compared to 24.7, the same age range. So it's a significant jump. So it's just the key point that we're really trying to push is that we want to decrease that number, decrease that gap between individuals with disabilities and individuals without. So the committee looked at the current SHARE curriculum, and we were looking at how we can provide access to our specialized populations of students. Jody mentioned the key of having those visuals, right? Using real pictures for them to relate to the content. And so this is just a couple additions that our committee, we just wanted to give you all a snapshot of what that would look like. So the next slide here, the committee provided and created like a vocabulary section to the curriculum. So we looked at all of the lessons, and we pulled out key vocab that we felt that the student and the teachers can refer to as they're going through the content and curriculum. So it looks upside down because the intention was to print it and then pop it up like a tent, right? And teachers can pull it out. And so we have the vocab word and then the visual that's tied to it. And we wanted to make sure that visual is used consistently across each lesson when that word appears. So the committee worked really hard on really gathering that information, and it's highlighted throughout the lessons as well. So they can refer back to these vocabulary cue cards as they're teaching, and then have the students refer back to it to have that additional visual. And then another component that we added were videos. And as we know, just our regular population of students, they say, anything past about 7 minutes or 10, you're losing interest. So we found this really great resource and tool, amaze.org, that has these little short videos that we thought were really relatable and really tied to the content. And the plus side, all of it was like under 5 minutes. Some were only 2 minutes long. And so we thought they were catchy, they were straight to the point. And that our students would really be able to connect with them. And the videos would provide them a better understanding and reinforce the content that the teachers are providing. And I don't know if you're able to play it. I think if you control click, it might lead you to the link. Oh, sure. That's a great idea.
But I'm not sure if Nicole is into horror films. Let me just ask her. Nicole! Hey, Nicole! You want to watch Werewolf vs. Zombie Vampire 6? Okay. Well, she didn't say no, so count us in. Sexual consent means that both people are actively willing to engage in a particular sexual behavior and express their consent by saying, yes, that's okay with me. But just because someone consents to engage in one kind of behavior does not mean that they have agreed to engage in another. Anyone has the right to change their mind about what they do or do not want to do at any time. This means that even if you are engaging in sexual acts with a person and they change their mind, you must stop and respect that person's wishes. Just because someone doesn't say no, it doesn't mean that they have said yes or given their consent. If a person is under the influence of drugs or alcohol, they are legally not able to give consent. Engaging in sexual behavior with someone who does not or cannot consent is sexual assault or rape. If you have been raped or sexually assaulted, please note that it is never your fault. It is also important to talk to a trusted adult about what has happened. Okay. Well, I guess next time we'll watch Love is in the Air 3. Okay, guys, till next time. And don't forget to come and visit me at amaze.org or go to my YouTube channel to watch more. Bye.
So just that video as an example, consent can be abstract. It can be a hard concept and terminology for our students to understand. But it provided different examples that we hope would provide our students access and a better understanding of what it means. And then that does conclude our presentation tonight, and we just shared our references here on this page.
Can I add a couple more things?
Sure.
With the video, and then also with the vocabulary cards, those are just one piece of a tiny part of a lesson, right? When we're doing a lesson on consent, what we know about our population, about many students with disabilities, is they need multiple means of representation of things. And so we need to show them the video. We need to show them the visuals. We need to do an activity. We need to come back to it several days or weeks in a row. And so part of making the accommodations and modifications to the original lessons was to add some of that in, because it was not enough, and we know that they're going to need it many times over. And that video, I might plan to play and then talk about each little segment within it. And I might play that video 25 times in my classroom to get them to understand all of the points of consent within the video. And then after a month of that, I might go into a different activity on consent. And so really getting at the need to have multiple representation, multiple ways for them to come back and say, I understand this, or to show it. They might role play, they might practice, they might engage in many different activities in order to truly understand consent. And they're going to need those visuals, and they're going to need those vocabulary cards constantly available to them as you're working through these very deep lessons, because a lot of sexuality and health education is very abstract, and trying to pull that in and make it meaningful for them needs all of these components. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you all so much for this presentation. This is just so important. And I'm really glad that we are starting as a committee to look at this and start moving forward to something that would be a better fit for our students. I think now is when we'll have time for questions and discussion. And just as a reminder to our committee, this is for presentation and discussion only. So the discussion is kind of the point at this point. I have a couple questions, and then I'll open it to the rest of the committee. If anyone in the room was even a part of the district back when there used to be hired share teachers, I'm curious, would those teachers teach these classes with individuals with developmental disabilities? Or at that point, had it still been the teachers in those specialized programs?
So I've been with the district about 20 years, so within special education. And from the very beginning, when I came in as a self-contained special education teacher in 2003, it was all on me as a special education teacher. It was difficult, and it still is in some schools, to get our students invited in for music or science, let alone sexuality and health education. And it wasn't even presented as an option for many years for them to engage in that in the general education classroom, whether it be elementary, middle, or high school. And so our self-contained special education teachers have been the ones primarily delivering this content through that old program that you saw. And as we've moved forward and the state has adopted our new alternate diploma is when we have started to move towards a push for more inclusive practices and getting our students access to a general ed health class in the high school programs or at the high school campuses so that they can access that there. But it has not traditionally been what we've been doing in Washoe County.
Thank you for providing that historical context and linking it to where we're at today. I'm going to move just a little bit. When you talk about concrete examples, you gave us examples in the slideshow of visual examples. That would be a good update, or an example that's your staff has currently updated it, and a video. When you talk about concrete examples, would you be talking about just a general health example, a small skeleton that's like stands in the classroom?
Yes, so there are some really brilliant companies out there that make models of obviously everything. They make a model of everything. And so giving them something that they can hold in their hands to be able to manipulate and understand, because we also have many students who have visual impairments. And so, a visual of a pregnant woman isn't necessarily going to do it, but being able to feel like, what does that feel like if it's a skeleton that's not pregnant versus a skeleton that is, having some real examples of that, in a perfect world, you could bring the babies in, but that doesn't always work out. But getting down to the most real and tangible aspects that we can to help them understand the content fuller. It's not capable, we're not able to make everything tangible, and we know that, especially with this content. And so as close as we can get as possible, and in some ways those real photos are very impacting versus some of the line drawings or cartoons that are typically used. Or if they need to see something very anatomically correct, that it's a drawing from like a textbook versus a cartoon, so that we can see the reality of it versus, SpongeBob.
Thank you for clarifying and expanding on that. And I know as a committee, some of us, I don't know who was on it at the time, we had received from a community member I don't know that you would call it realia, but like physical models of the clitoris and the ovaries and uterus at one point. So I'm sure there's plenty available now at this point for your students' needs. And my final question before I turn it over to the committee is, do you have any data on, or just your own experiences with, would you, I don't know how to describe it without going into a rant. Would you say that individuals with developmental disabilities or developmental delays have sexual identities in the LGBTQ rainbow or spectrum the same as the rest of the population?
Absolutely. And again, guess what? There's a wide body of research in this area. There are academics specifically researching this, and I just listened to one last month specifically talking about our population of students being represented across all categories, as they are for all ethnic groups, as they are for other disabled conditions. And so it actually is, it's there. It is often misidentified because of the difficulty with expressive communication, or we spend a lot of time in our world teaching about boys and girls and understanding boys do this and girls do that. And many, many years of trying to teach that taught incorrectly that you must fall into this category. And so there's a lot of reteaching having to happen, and there's a community looking at how detrimental that has been for this population because it was taught that way for many years. And so there's a lot of work being done. They are absolutely identified in our population, but they are less identified because of those communication deficits. But I have
Thank you
research
so
on
much.
it. If you want it, I have the research. It's there.
I do. You can send it to Rochelle. I would be really interested in reading that. Thank you. Thank you, all three of you, so much for providing all this context and expertise. You've really done a wonderful job, and I think the rest of the community will look forward to hearing the rest, what else you have to say for our questions. So committee members, if you, yep, I see Manny first, and then I don't remember who that was on the left. Yep. Shall we swoop around? Great.
All right, I guess I get to start first. The first question I wanted to ask you is, what are you going to do to ensure that our students are receiving the curriculum? Because you had stated earlier that we have teachers that are basically encouraging parents to say no, and from the sounds of it, outright refusing to teach said curriculum to students. So how are we going to be able to ensure that they are actually getting the material?
Well, and I just want to say this isn't all special ed teachers that are, refusing to teach or uncomfortable about it. We have experienced that and have helped coach them in it. The problem lies in that, we don't have an updated curriculum. So what should we do about it? I believe the best way to start to try to address this is if we can look at the accommodations that our committee has made. If you could all look at it and help us get it out to high schools. And I'm thinking further down the road, there is some good research-based curriculum that is developed for students with intellectual disabilities and developmental delays. And we may want to consider that down the road for our students who are needing more of that specialized. And with the curriculum, we need to train teachers. That's what they need. So I'd really recommend that whether we go ahead with the accommodations, if we do, or if we end up looking at a curriculum for our specialized population, that we definitely provide the training. That's key. You cannot educate students without educating teachers first.
Awesome. That was really my main question and worry. Thank you.
Vanessa Vancourt for the record. Thank you so much for presenting and for being here. It was really eye-opening, I think really important information. One of my questions, I have a few, is a follow-up to Manny's, but it's more about the barriers that you and your team are facing. There's training, which I imagine has some funding connections, the curricular update. How would you identify the barriers that our special ed teachers are facing and specialists and experts in this area to make this happen?
Fortunately, I have time with my special programs in the beginning of the year to give training. So we train every year. I would definitely, if we're going to update the curriculum, I would definitely want to include that in our kickoff training so that all the teachers get trained from elementary to high school. Even if we look at high school first, I would love for our elementary teachers to be in the know of what is current and what's happening. And then also working with our special ed professional learning to make sure that we provide opportunities for additional training. Jody Prudente, actually, she teaches hot topic classes on issues for our programs, and that would be something that we would definitely include. So I would look at every opportunity to provide that to our teachers.
Thank you. And follow up to that is, who do you need buy-in from? You have your colleagues in administration and leadership, but who do you need buy-in for this to happen?
Well, I think we need buy-in from the committee here. And I think we need buy-in from the community. I think we need to educate our community about, what we currently have and what we're looking about to provide access. And yes, buy-in for teachers. And we need buy-in from our students, that we make sure that what we present is engaging and it's appropriate for them. And I believe having more heads at the table, that, you have more input. That's why I think it was key that for our original stab at this, we developed a committee that had CLS and strategies high school teachers that were boots on the ground teaching students. So having that stakeholder input, and then of course parents. We need to hear from parents. Parents need to be in on this, and they need to be aware of what we have and kind of what we think is needed.
Thank you. This is my last question. Who do you look to for inspiration? What other school districts are doing this well at this level?
So this work is being done across the nation, really, and it's state by state, depending on their laws for the implementation of curriculum. Obviously, it's very different. And so those states who have embraced sexuality education are the ones that are progressive in embracing education for our students with disabilities as well. And so there are leaders in the field out there that are doing the work, and they're getting it in the hands of the student population that we're talking about, and they're showing results, and they're showing that it's impacting individuals as they're going into their young adult lives. And so there are also national organizations like the Americans with Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. There is the Council for Exceptional Children and their division for autism and developmental disabilities. And then there's TASH, which is a advocacy organization for individuals with developmental disabilities. And those big organizations are working with individuals in the community and school districts to show what needs to be done to make it work for this population.
Thank you.
Hi, Kelly Roper for the record. So my biggest question, I guess, and I do totally appreciate the presentation. I guess my question is, knowing that we have done lessons from 4th grade to 9th grade, it's a lot of space, right? And I recognize the amaze.org video. I have no idea what grade level we put it in, but we love those videos too. So I guess I'm just wondering, if you get buy-in from us, you've done some stuff with your committee. I guess, what do you see our role as? I know Rochelle's done an amazing job, but none of us are experts at this population. And so how would we go about, are you wanting to take the information that we have and change it to work best, or pick from the topics? Or are you wanting to kind of pick and choose, maybe what we did for 7th or 8th grade might work better for high school? How are you wanting us to change what we've done, or are we redoing, I guess I would ask?
So I'll tell you where we started, because I felt like we just needed to start somewhere. And it was daunting, but there's been a lot of barriers to get it going. But so I thought we'll start with this committee to look at the curriculum and start with high school, because high school had been updated. And so I thought that would be a good place to start. And so what we did was we actually went ahead and looked at each lesson for high school, and we made accommodations for each lesson. So we enriched the vocabulary, we added picture supports, we added activities. So there was a lot actually that we did add as supplemental to the lessons. So I know that these things would need to go to the committee to have approval on, but we kind of wanted to start somewhere. And I'll tell you, like I mentioned in the beginning, this discussion led to how are we going to do this? How would we give our students access to this, right? So there are some great curriculum out there that we actually looked at that is research-based and would helped us give ideas about how we could enhance the lesson and what type of strategies we could use. So I would say the committee was very vocal in saying that we need some curriculum specialized for our population. And I would recommend that any kind of curriculum should go to stakeholders, and we should go through the process to adopt a curriculum. But for right now, I recommend that we would start by getting access to this accommodated curriculum that we did. We didn't take anything out. We added a lot of visuals and supports and vocabulary and activities to the lessons.
So that leads me to my next question, because we would probably have to look at it and then advise it to go to the board. But like, as this continues, would you guys be, say, taking the role of Rochelle in that your committee meets, you recommend changes to or additions, so to speak, and then bring them to us? Or is that something that you're wanting Rochelle to do? I'm just curious, like, would that be your role, to bring additions and then present it to us and then have a back and forth and then we say, yes, we'd like this to go to the board? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Well, we were hoping that the committee could look at, first let me back up. We wanted to come to let you know that there is an issue happening here with curriculum, and kind of give you some why we need some updates and accommodations for the curriculum. And with that, we didn't want to overwhelm you because we'd probably be here until midnight. We don't want to be one of those meetings, but because we did a lot of accommodations. So we'd like to give the committee a chance to look at our accommodations that we made and get your feedback. And then we would like to the board as well to look at our recommendations for accommodations. Rochelle, could you add to that?
Yes. So Kelly, if this is what you're asking, just as I develop curriculum, right, with the resources that we have locally and nationally, this group with Jody and Trish and Linda have done the same. And so what they did is they brought it to me because they were the experts in that field. So they looked at our high school curriculum, what we had, and just as they said, they've started to make adaptations and modifications to it to better support and meet the needs of the student population that we're talking about tonight. So it would just come back just kind of like a normal lesson, but you would see what they've added to our high school curriculum that you all updated. Oh my gosh, was it 3 years ago? So that's what it will look like. And we'll go from there. Same thing, couple lessons each meeting. Okay.
I just wanted to ask to put it on the record to get it cleared, to set the stage for what we would be doing, or what your desire expectation is to come back here and to go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie Schumann. For the record, I just have 3 questions, but they're pretty short questions. So in the earlier slides, you indicated that about 16% of students with intellectual disabilities are receiving sexual education. I'm curious, is that due to parents not wanting to allow their children to participate in the curriculum?
So that statistic came from this first study that you see on this reference slide right here, on predictors of access to sex education. And so there are lots of reasons why it's not happening, whether it's parent denial, or there's no curriculum, or they haven't adopted something, or the students aren't allowed to go to the class where they're getting that sex ed curriculum, or they're literally taken out of class sometimes when sex ed comes in. So there's a lot of barriers that are halting their access to that education.
I understand the study is probably nationwide, but more specific to Washoe County and our school district, can you speak to maybe one of the more prominent barriers? Is it because they're being removed from the classroom? Is it parents not wanting to sign the waiver, or
You want
can
me
you
to talk
say
experience? I can tell you
at
my
a personal experience.
My personal experience after being in the classroom 17 years was that it was, again, all of those things.
Okay.
Often when parents refused or denied, it was because they didn't have enough information. And so when we first adopted that curriculum that you saw, we were doing parent information nights, and we were doing teacher trainings. And as years went on, those things fell by the wayside, and we stopped doing them. And so when that wasn't available for families, they were just going to say, no, thank you. And when there wasn't training for teachers, the teachers may not have even known that they were supposed to be teaching this content. Our self-contained teachers come in. Sometimes they are certified to teach special ed, and sometimes they aren't, and they're just trying to get their feet under them. And so there's a lot of reasons why they weren't getting access.
Okay.
Many of our students were not typically having access to that general ed class where the content was being taught. So in the high school, it was the health class. In the middle school, it's the science class. And so they weren't even in those classes. So it wasn't necessarily like they were specifically denied sexuality education, but they weren't in the class where it was being presented.
Okay, that makes so much. I'm not a teacher, so that helps me understand a little bit more behind that.
And I was just going to add to that, I can speak to the elementary level when our counselors had their days where they went in and did the shared curriculum with the classes. It did go home with our families and our parents as well, but the minute they saw sexuality education or health, they declined. They didn't opt out. But as a case manager, I made sure that I said, hey, there's a modified curriculum, and then I did my own impromptu like parent info night and sent them the materials of this is what we're actually going over. And if you don't feel comfortable that they're doing it within their gen ed classroom, we are doing it here within our specialized program. So giving them that option, but I would say I did have a handful that still declined, even though it was modified and then within our smaller environment.
Understood. Yeah, thank you for that. My next question, do you envision there being just one elementary curriculum, one middle school curriculum, one high school curriculum, or do you envision 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and beyond?
So the first thing we envision is that there's accommodations made for the typical curriculum, so that our students that do access those classes have some accommodations for them to be able to access that content when they're there. And then the next thing we envision is that there is specialized curriculum for our self-contained teachers, likely a elementary and a secondary.
Understood. Okay, thank you. And then my last question, social media and electronic devices are obviously very prevalent amongst all of our youth. Do you see there being a specific need to really focus very specific time to cell phones, content, internet, access, social media for our students with developmental delays and intellectual disabilities? And I know the answer is yes, but to what extent do you see that being?
Absolutely, and we talked a lot about this because in some ways our students rely on those devices more because they may rely on devices for communication and for accessing information. And they may use a lot of voice to text. They may use more of those devices than some of their peer counterparts. There are accommodations made to the lessons that are already available, but then there are also lessons that would need to be done that are very different. For some of our students, it might be a very different kind of lesson on, what you're putting out there and where does that go and who has access to it. And so, again, it's a lot about that time and that we may have to spend more time and dig deeper and be more explicit.
Great, awesome, thank you.
All right, Sarah Linda Kaiser for the record. First of all, I want to say thank you very much. I'm really excited to hear you talk about these students, and I agree with everything you said. I do have a question, and I don't know whether it's for you or for our lawyer or for anybody else in the room, but is there anything different about the curricular approval process that this committee should be aware of as we move through? We kind of know what it looks like when we, put forth 4th grade to the school district. Does the accommodation look any different? Same process?
As far as I know, same process.
So we would say, okay, we're looking at 9th grade, and we've approved, say we got this, we've approved these accommodations. We would then do the same thing, send it forward to the trustees in the same way? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you. And just as a point of order, I know this is not an action item tonight, but what we do moving forward, then do we consider whether this is something that the board, that this body can consider, or do you tell us we consider? What happens next?
Okay, let me approach that question, Sarah Linda, and I hope I'm answering it correctly. So what I foresee for our meeting, we don't have one in March because it falls right in the middle of spring break. And I know everybody would like to take spring break. But we will meet in April, and we will have our team come forward with a few lessons to present to our committee. Same kind of thing that we've done in the past, a couple lessons each meeting. So it's not a midnight, 1 o'clock type of meeting.
Thank you.
Can
That
I
answered it for me.
Step in? Thank you, Linda. Sarah Linda, can I step into that? Because I do have one thought. This is a beautiful process, and I love to see these two parts of the district working very closely together. I have some concern that if it's something that this committee has approved, then I'm concerned that then any further modifications needed to meet the needs of this specific population would no longer be allowed. Because the law is very, like the way the district has handled current share stuff is like, this is the way it goes. I might not have a question. I might just be making a statement.
I understand what you're saying, Ashley. That's a good question.
Just something for us to consider, I guess, as we move forward. Okay, thank you, everyone. Luis, do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Thank you. Lydia, did you have anything that you would like to say, or Rabbi? Sorry, I heard somebody in.
No, I'm good.
person.
I think the questions that I had have been asked and answered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I have some, Rabbi Benjamin Zober for the record. I think I have some similar sort of questions, or just curiosities about, I don't know, I don't want to say the limits of what we do, but I think our general mission is sort of set as to what ages and grades we are working on and what the parameters are, and whether adding this in fits into that as imagined, or if that would be a potential roadblock. I don't know necessarily that there's any legal thing, but it might take some additional explaining or documentation to make sure that everyone sees that it's part and parcel to what we're doing, as opposed to some sort of attempt to bring in some other agenda.
Thank you, Rabbi. Is that Kelly, I see?
Kelly Roper for the record. So in answer to somebody else's question, you were saying that you envisioned kind of an elementary, elementary. So did you say elementary, middle, and secondary, just elementary and secondary? Okay, so I guess in regard, I believe it was at this end of the table that asked this question, but there's a lot of lessons to kind of choose from. So I'm curious if when you're looking, clearly you started with high school because that's what you had, right? And we've since gone from 4th grade to 8th grade. So there's a lot of content to choose from, and maybe more appropriate content. Like what we've done since high school might be more appropriate to be your secondary content. I'm just curious, and maybe want to encourage that you don't feel obligated to, I mean, you've already done the work in high school. Don't think I'm trying to tell you not to show us the hard work you did, but not to feel obligated to stick to our grade levels. Like, I guess 7th, 8th, 9th could count as secondary. Like, you don't have to feel obligated to say, and this is the high school that we're doing if we did something better in 7th or 8th grade, I guess, if that makes sense.
So let me clarify something first, and then I have something additional to say in regards to what you mentioned. So first, we want to accommodate all the lessons that you guys have done, because we want to increase access for our students that will get this content in those general education settings. So we do want to accommodate everything that you've done, 4th through 8th. And then we would like to look at something in addition for some of our students who cannot access even the accommodated curriculum. So for our students that are needing more supports, okay, because our students with intellectual disabilities are across the spectrum, and some of them are much more impacted than others, and they're going to need a different kind of access to a different set of materials that would look different, which Tricia mentioned. There are some pre-made programs that are out there that could meet that demand, okay? Also, as you mentioned with some of the 4th through 8th curriculum, we talked about that. We may need to pull some of those into our high school because we know that our students may need more instruction on some of those early content lessons, whether it be some of the puberty pieces or specific things that they just didn't get enough of and may need repeated at a later grade.
Sarah Linda Kaiser for
Thank
the
you
record. Oh, sorry.
Go for it.
And I guess the question that I have now has come up. I want to make sure that I understand accommodation in this context. So what I'm understanding about accommodating each of our lessons, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that you would be bringing us information that would be refinements to the lesson that would be used with your students. But we are not changing the lessons that we approved for typically developing students. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we didn't remove any content. Everything is still there. It's that we added visual supports, we added videos, we added activities, we added more to it, and in some cases a lot more, to help make it more accessible for the population. But everything that was previously approved and created remains in the lessons.
So the follow-up to this then is we do not then need to send back all of these approved lessons for the majority of the school district back to the school board for reapproval, or do we?
So the goal was to then present the board with their accommodations that they've added to our curriculum.
Thank you, all three of you, so much for your time and for your thoughtful presentation, and thank you so much for taking such great care of our kiddos. Was there any further discussion from our committee or anything else our presenters would like to say? Manny?
Just one other additional follow-up. Obviously, I know that we want to make sure that we're doing accommodations. Do you guys also envision trying to get this adopted into other languages for our students, for our EL population that also qualifies within the SPED population? I know it may not be happen right away, but is that an eventual thing to try to do also?
We did. We talked to Rochelle about that. That we'll want to have it translated into Spanish at least.
Perfect.
It'd be lovely to have it in a few other languages, but we know we can probably get Spanish done.
So, and currently, Manny, all of our curriculums that have been updated, and even our proposed curriculum, is translated into Spanish. So it is available in Spanish. So if you look at high school, you'll see the English and then the Spanish version, and mainly for some of our families too, so that they could access the curriculum when they were doing parent previews. And yes, I know there's so many other languages that we aren't covering, but we're making some baby steps. So
this is why I inserted a slow clap for everybody. Good job.
Yeah. Staff has really been doing a great job. Spanish is a good starting point. They'll never be able to cover everything. I think we have more than 100 languages spoken in homes in this district. Thank you, Maddie, for that question. Anything else? Wonderful. Thank you so much to our presenters.
Yes,
I'll ask
thank
one
you,
more
ladies.
time, Luis, is there any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Excellent. Okay, so that was 2.03. Thank you for the reminder, Andrea. That was 2.03, and so looking at our closing items, 3.01 is general public comment. Is there any public comment for that?
Hi, Ashley. Yes, we received electronic public comment from Joseph Morabito.
Thank you. And our members have all received that as an email much earlier, and you've already had the time to read that. Thank you all for your dedication and professionalism in that regard. Okay, so we're looking at 3.02. Our next meeting will be April 11th, 2022. That's a third of the year already, Lord. And looking at 6:57, and we'll adjourn. Thank you, everyone, so much. It's truly a pleasure working with you.